President Donald Trump has taken another dramatic step by planning for the future of the Gaza Strip. Washington is formulating an initiative that envisions full American rehabilitation of the Strip on the condition that Hamas vacates power and disarms. If it refuses, Israel will advance full occupation or siege of population centers, and according to the general staff, the plan will be presented to the cabinet this week. The plan reportedly includes closing a ring around Gaza City and the central camps. Qatar opposes this plan, but Egypt warns Hamas that the world hears the residents' calls against it. And meanwhile, an investigation in the German news portal Bild reveals that photographer Anas Zayed staged hunger scenes in collaboration with a Turkish agency, and the videos showing starving hostages, Israeli hostages, also weaken support for the terrorist organization Hamas. And meanwhile, the IDF's Kfir Brigade destroyed a weapons warehouse in Khan Yunis this week as secondary explosions indicated extensive ammunition stockpiles. Hamas looted 8 trucks and shot at civilians, while discussions have intensified surrounding the idea of establishing the humanitarian city in Rafah as an interim solution to this conflict. In Judea and Samaria, a nighttime operation thwarted terror infrastructure, weapons, and hundreds of thousands of shekels were confiscated from a terrorist headquarters. In Yemen, a Houthi missile was intercepted this week, but not before millions of civilians entered their protected spaces in the middle of the night. In Lebanon, under United States pressure, it was decided that the National Army will present a plan for dismantling Hezbollah by December. The organization, for its part, held a motorcycle rally in the Dahya neighborhood of Beirut, while its leadership threatened security will collapse in 1 hour if you break through. However, the capacity of this organization to take offensive action was severely degraded by the IDF campaign against them last year. It is estimated that around 5,000 commanders from their elite that were eliminated in this campaign, while morale in the organization is reported to be at an all-time low. The United States is now declaring that it must disarm in order to allow talks about IDF withdrawal from the Lebanese border. In Syria, Israel has cut off the Shiite backdoor into the Levant and exposed a joint Russian-Iranian nuclear plan. There were also some dramatic developments this past week in international diplomacy as Britain announced it would extend recognition of a Palestinian state in September if the situation does not change. Jerusalem sees this as a prize for terror, while Hamas attacked President Trump and called him a murderer following his statements that the United States provided enormous aid to the Gaza Strip. The president responded by saying Hamas does not want a deal. Israel will have to decide. On the Iranian front, tensions continue despite the ceasefire, while sources report a secret Russian-Iranian nuclear plan. President Trump says if Tehran continues, we will strike again. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what's happening in Israel on day 669 of the war with Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and the terror organizations in Judea and Samaria. All of them are acting under the control of Iran's Revolutionary Guards, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And a moment before we go deeper, I want to ask you guys to help us. So go to YouTube channel, to the TBN Israel YouTube channel, and hit that subscribe button to help us share the truth so that people will know how to pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Evil thrives here and wears many different faces.
But in the middle of it all, is Israel, a tiny democracy fighting for its life against extremist regimes and terrorist armies that glorify death, not life.
Yet somehow the world calls us the aggressor.
Because evil has hijacked the narrative and twisted the truth.
And the West? Well, too often it believes the lies because comprehending such evil is hard. And when people can't understand it, they misplace the blame.
This battle isn't just about Israel. This is a threat to the entire free world.
Because when the truth dies, freedom dies with it.
So stand with Israel, defend the truth, and make sure it gets out to the entire world. Go to www.tbn.org/standwithisrael and donate now. Our future depends on it.
Now we're going to see the catastrophic failure of the United Nations to distribute that aid.
There are many proofs that shows how Hamas is looting the food and taking it and putting it in storage in their own underground facilities.
So guys, we have been hearing a lot about reports that the IDF and Israel is starving the Gazan population in the Gaza Strip. So today we decided to go boots on the ground into Gaza, into Crossway, from which the humanitarian trucks are entering Gaza from Israel, to see what really is happening on the ground. It's going to be a long drive. It's around 2 hours from Jerusalem, and it's going to be very hot, so I'm taking some water, helmet, bulletproof vest, Bible I always have with me, and of course, boots. But first, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I even stopped my car on the side of the road to help you hit that subscribe button, okay? What really is annoying about this situation is that basically, no matter how much help and humanitarian aid Israel is providing the Gaza population, the international media is spreading lies and deceit that reaches more and more people around the world with false information than with the truth. Sadly, this is what's going on. Because the enemies of Israel, Iran, Qatar, and other countries are investing a lot of finances in order to spread false propaganda against what's happening in the Gaza Strip.
That's exactly what it is. False propaganda.
So guys, a little bit of off-road driving here, and we made it into the Gaza-Israel border, and I see the both ends. Okay, we've made it. It sure is crazy hot here. Ready to go? So guys, we just arrived at the location, and behind me here is one of the humanitarian aid trucks that are delivering the food after it crosses into the Gaza side of the border. So you have to see, look at all the metal and the barbed wire and the glasses of this truck. Because the moment it enters Gaza, it is immediately looted by the Palestinians that want the food, or by Hamas themselves. So it needs to be protected. This looks like a scene from Mad Max or something like that. Just crazy, really crazy situation here. We are now entering into the Gaza Strip to see what humanitarian aid is actually reaching. But what we have been seeing in the last few weeks is that the international media keeps proclaiming the statement that Israel is starving the Gaza population. Is that true? Is there any merit to that? Where do we receive these reports from?
No, the allegations of deliberate starvation are complete bullshit. When we go into the Gaza Strip now, we're going to see not only the humanitarian aid that Israel is letting in, but also the catastrophic failure of the United Nations to distribute that aid. We're going to see the contents of hundreds of trucks rotting in the sun because the UN has not been able to shift it and get it to the people who need it and make sure Hamas can't steal it. And unfortunately, unfortunately, instead of taking responsibility and scaling up their operations and taking certain risks in a war zone, they find it much easier to blame Israel because they've been doing what they've been doing since the very beginning of the war, trying to pressure Israel to end the war with the Hamas regime still in power in Gaza, free to plot another October 7th massacre, and free to catch its breath for the next war.
Well, which is what they're doing. Why is the humanitarian aid so important for Hamas?
Humanitarian aid is important because it is Hamas's main financial lifeline. Its international sources of funding have, in large part, been cut off, and it's been able to make money by taxing the goods that go into Gaza. Whatever goes
selling
to the market.
it at very inflated prices to the population.
Or when the merchants sell them at inflated prices, you go around with a gun to the merchant and say, give me thousands of dollars. And so Hamas operates as a protection. So the goods going into Gaza have enabled Hamas to sustain its governance structure inside the Gaza Strip and its control over the population. That's why what Israel tries to do with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is to separate Hamas from the civilian population and make sure aid can get to the people who need it and bypass the Hamas system and Hamas's ability to infiltrate the broken UN system. But you know, the Gaza Strip now is the most complicated humanitarian challenge in military history because there's nowhere else in the world where the UN is expected to deliver aid inside an active combat zone controlled by the enemy. Normally, civilians are moved out of harm's way and you give them aid somewhere safe. But here, Egypt shut the border for more than the last year. It won't let any aid at all through the Rafah crossing. Civilians aren't allowed to leave. And so you have the challenge of how to get aid to people who need it when Hamas is hiding in tunnels under their feet and trying to get its hands on whatever it can.
Yeah, no, it's a very terrible situation, but are any other countries delivering aid to their enemies during a war?
It's not something that happens. International law says that countries have an obligation to facilitate aid to the enemy population as long as there's no evidence that it's going to support the enemy's army. And here it is going to support the enemy's military. And Israel is still allowing that aid to reach the people who need it, of course.
Well, thank you so much. Let's see what's going to happen inside.
Let's have a look inside.
So we are now inside the Gaza Strip. I'm here. Aid corridor in Gaza, just a few minutes from the Israeli border, right next to the Kerem Shalom border crossing. This is one of the main gateways where food, water, medicine enter into the Gaza Strip. Aid comes through in two ways: by trucks, hundreds of them every week, and now, for the first time in this war, by air. Over the weekend, Israeli planes dropped pallets of humanitarian aid straight into Gaza. I'm talking about flour, sugar, canned food, the basics. The big question that the world keeps asking is this: are people in Gaza starving? And if so, who is responsible? So first, let's be clear. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is very serious. People are struggling. That's what happens in this war, and in a war in general. And make no mistakes, there is a war going on just kilometers from where I'm standing now. And the IDF is fighting Hamas terrorists in 7 areas across the Gaza Strip. In Khan Yunis, in the south, in Gaza City, in the north. Combat brigades are going after terror tunnels, weapon sites, and Hamas fighters. With all that is happening, how is aid still getting in? This past week alone, more than 258 trucks were allowed into the Gaza through the crossings just like this one. Another 600 trucks worth of, food, water, and medicine were distributed by the United Nations and other aid groups inside Gaza. Israel also just began airdropping humanitarian aid. 7 pallets went in the weekend, flown in by the Israeli Air Force. On top of that, Israel has opened humanitarian corridors designated safe routes inside Gaza where the United Nations aid convoys can pass without being caught in the crossfire of this fighting. These are carefully coordinated zones and times also that have windows where the IDF pauses its combat operations and its activity to allow the movement of trucks, supplies, and even civilians in these areas. Israel also declares temporarily that humanitarian pauses will take effect hours each day, often between the morning and the late afternoon, where military action is halted in specific zones with high civilian populations. This is meant to give the people a chance to access the food, the water, the medical care, and the aid workers to operate more freely and safely to bring the food to those who need it. Israel also reconnected an imported electrical power line in the southern desalination plant inside Gaza. That plant is now producing 10 times more clean water than before. And all of this is happening while the war continues. Israeli soldiers are under fire, and still the state is working to get aid into Gaza. But here's where things get complicated. Israel says it's not responsible for distribution of the aid inside the Gaza Strip. Once the trucks pass through Kerem Shalom or other border crossings, it's up to the United Nations and the international organizations to collect it and give it to the people. And that's where things start to break down. Not just because of logistics, but because of the Hamas terrorists. Israel says there is no famine in Gaza. And if people are starving, it's not because Israel isn't letting food in. It's because Hamas is taking their food and are stealing it to their civilian population at a highly inflated price. Hamas is known for stealing the aid and hiding it inside tunnels or selling it for profit. They've done this before, and they recently did it as well, and the IDF released footage of Hamas fighters feasting underground in tunnels while children above the ground in Gaza struggle to find food. The reality is that Hamas doesn't care if their own people go hungry. In fact, the worse things get for the Palestinian people, the more the world sees the pain and the suffering, the better it is for Hamas's strategy. And once again, they're using their own civilians as a weapon, as a shield, as PR against Israel. So Israel says it's doing everything it can to avoid hurting the innocent people of the Gaza Strip, even while fighting a brutal enemy, Hamas. And on the other hand, the Palestinian terrorist organization is doing the opposite. They hide in hospitals, they launch rockets from schools, they steal weapons under homes and store them inside children's cribs. And they're using starvation as a story, a headline, to turn the world against Israel. So let's go take a look at what really is happening. I'm standing here in the middle of a humanitarian aid distribution center inside the Gaza Strip. So the aid trucks reach Kerem Shalom from the Israeli side of the border, and then they dump all the humanitarian aid, all the goods, the flour here. The IDF is making sure that there is no weapons, no bombs, no munitions, nothing here. And then the United Nations trucks are supposed to take these goods and deliver it to the Palestinian people inside the Gaza Strip. But they haven't been doing that. And all this aid has been sitting here. Tons and tons and tons of humanitarian aid has been sitting here to rot in the sun. And I can tell you, it is boiling hot in here. So, is Israel starving the Palestinian people? Or is it the United Nations? Or is it Hamas? Let me know what you think in the comments, guys.
We are here at the Gazan side of the Kerem Shalom crossing. Now, it's important for me to emphasize here, as the representative of the IDF, we are not starving anyone. This is not an aim. This is not a war goal for us. We are fighting Hamas. Vicious Hamas is fighting his own people. You already know that. He's using his population as human shield. Cynically, he's using them in order to create this campaign of starvation against Israel, against the IDF. This is a war zone for over 21 months now. It's a war that was imposed on us. We didn't select this war. We didn't want to open this war. They opened it. Now they are using starvation as a tool of war against us. It's a strategic weapon in their hands. It's very sad. Now, if it's because of any reason, security reason, we offered the UN already several times to support it, but they refused to that. Now we are improving this effort, regardless of Hamas efforts to stop it. We will push it as hard as we can, including airdrops of food by us and by other foreign countries, including opening humanitarian corridors, secured humanitarian corridors, temporarily, in certain times, in certain areas, in order to hand food directly to the people of Gaza, without Hamas looting it. Now we have to understand and we have to remember, I also saw this fake news in the last few days all over the media. There are many proofs, you already seen that, video clips, recordings from phone conversations between Hamas people and themselves, enough proofs that shows how Hamas is looting the food and taking it and putting it in storage in their own underground facilities and in their warehouses, and stopping the food from the population of Gaza. There is food in Gaza right now as we speak, but it is in the wrong hands. We will continue to push as hard as we can to feed the people of Gaza on one hand. On the other hand, we will keep fighting Hamas as hard as we can in order to dismantle Hamas. Hamas cannot control the Gaza Strip the day after. So we cannot allow October 7th happen again, this massacre again. We won't allow it. This is our mission. And most important than all, we still have 50 hostages captive brutally in the hands of Gaza in the underground facilities. They are being tortured as we speak now. And we will do our best in order to free them and bring them home, dead and alive alike. Thank you very much.
So, back in Israel, we just finished a full day of recording inside the Gaza Strip, not far from the border, in the humanitarian area where the food is being brought from Israel into the Gazan side, and then in there, the United Nations trucks should get it into the hands of the Palestinian people, hopefully without Hamas stealing it. And guys, now you can be the judge, and you can answer the question: is Israel really starving the Gaza population or not? Let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe.